Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to our webinar from the Pacific Southwest Minority Supplier Development Council. They are presenting us, we are the Diversity Masterminds, and we're going to tell you how to show up and follow up, how to activate your certification at the NMSDC conference. So Heather, do you want to introduce yourself and then I'll go?
Sure. I'm Heather Cox, and in addition to being the co-mastermind of Diversity Masterminds, I am also the president and co-founder of Certify My Company. I probably met some of you at the Pacific Southwest event maybe a couple months ago in San Diego, and I moderated a panel down there, but we're very excited to talk to you guys today because the conferences can be such a great business development tool. You just have to know how to prepare to show up and then follow up.
Exactly. And I'm Liz Whitehead. I'm another co-mastermind of Diversity Masterminds. And as Heather said, we know what the value can be of these big conferences. And we started Diversity Masterminds to get the word out there about how to make the most of your certification. And today, particularly, we're going to talk about when you're going to one of these large national conferences, the things to keep in mind, how to prepare, and how to make the most of it. And for right now, feel free, since we have definitely a group that we can work with, so definitely feel free to ask questions as we go, but we will leave time for questions at the end. So something that you have a question about, we might answer later, but feel free to ask questions as we go. Okay, so the first part of preparing, of showing up and following up, is actually preparing, getting ready to go. This is all stuff that you can do in advance. The number one thing that we say to do is to build relationships with your local organizations, connect with local or event contacts with any questions you have. So you guys are already ahead of the game because you're already looking to PSWMSDC for resources and things to prepare you. And I would say if you have any questions as you go, make sure that you get those answered in advance. For example, I know that the matchmaking profile is open for NMSDC. You want to check out your profile and make sure that it looks right, that it has all the complete and accurate information. If you have questions about how to do that, it's good to reach out to the event contacts in advance to say, hey, how do I get that done? How do I make my profile really shine? The other thing that you want to do is get to know your target market. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You want to identify which of your target companies will actually be there and how to approach them. And then we'll talk about making an event playbook, how you write notes and keep track and get a head start on follow-up. So for right now, you're actually preparing. So that's good. You've reached out to your local organization. They have a resource for you, and you've already completed that first task. So this is what we'll spend the most of our time on, and this is good. This is going to help you not only for the conference, but for beyond the conference, how you really maximize your certification. So you want to think about these 5 things. Who is your target market? Who are the people that can really use your goods and services? And Heather, how many people would you advise that they look at for their target market?
I usually advise about 5. 5 to 10 max, because you just don't have the ability to really focus on much more than 5 to 10. And it could be that some years I go with just 3. Some years I suggest people go with, it kind of has a range depending on who you're looking to do business with, because these large, especially if it's the large companies that you're looking to follow up with or looking to market to, they can be very time and cost intensive to sell to market to court.
Yes. Exactly. I talk to people sometimes that are, I talked to one gentleman who said he registered in 50 supplier diversity portals, and it took him a year to do it. And then by the time he was done, he had to go
to start all over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it did not yield results. And so that's what I was like, you need to target. So really think about that target market. Who can you actually provide solutions to? The next thing is, how do you find out? How do you find out who that target market is? What I think that a great place to start is the list of corporate sponsors who are actually going to be at the conference. and find out who's going to be there. You can also, through the matchmaking, you can also look and see which companies are participating in matchmaking, I think. But, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. But that's a great place to start. Who are the people that are going to be at the conference, and who are companies that you think your specific good and service is going to help? The other thing is, how do you know what they're looking for? This is where Heather mentioned she was doing social media right before we got on the webinar. This is a great way to find out what they're looking for. Unlike federal government contracting and things like that, which I'm familiar with because I'm in the DC area, there's not published RFPs. There's not generally forecasts and things that you can look at to find out what goods and services they're trying to buy. But what you can find out from social media is like, where are their pain points? What are some of the goals they have, and where might they be struggling? One example is, I saw that I actually have a Google alert for supplier diversity. Right. And through that, I got a notice that Macy's just instituted a brand new goal for diversity and inclusion initiatives. And with that goal, that's something that when you approach the people at Macy's, you can say, I know you have this goal. I know that you just set out these initiatives. This is where my company can fit into that. So it can be as easy as setting a Google alert for when these companies are, what these companies are doing, where they appear in the news. The other thing is that when you're at the conference, you can start to get information that way. You can start to say, this is what I do. This is where I feel like I fit into your company. That's not to say you don't want to go up and ask them, this is what I do, and what can you do for me?
Yeah. Do you buy this stuff? Do you buy this?
You buy this? Or even worse, what do you do? You want to have a sense of that before you go in, before that you have the conversation. Because oftentimes you don't get a second chance with these companies, right? You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So you want to know what you can do for them. But meeting them at the conference is a chance to start to build that relationship. Heather, are there other ways that you know what the companies are looking for?
So I know that, for example, before WeBank, we noticed that Kate from Nestle had posted what she was looking for on her LinkedIn. So if you know your contact at that organization, they will sometimes post what they're going to be looking for. Now, they don't also even know all the time. Not all the people that you're going to meet will actually know what the entire company is buying. There is a good group of supplier diversity managers that make the rounds before every conference and find out what their procurement team is going to be looking for in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, so they can start looking for suppliers that can fulfill those needs. But not all of them do that. So sometimes you do have to ask, do you ever buy this service? And that's when you can ask that occasionally, and it's a lot of times better to do it pre-conference than at the conference. Maybe reach out on LinkedIn or somewhere in the social media to find out. But those are also really great ways to find out what they're looking for.
Yep. I'm glad you brought up Kate, because that was a really good one. LinkedIn is a great way to find out what people are doing. And you can also follow hashtags on LinkedIn, like supplier diversity. And so that if you're not sure, if you haven't made those targets yet, that can start to give you a sense of, okay, these are the people that are really involved in this, that are setting the goals. The other thing you want to know is, how committed are they, right? If they're at the conference, if they're at the NMSDC conference, and they have a certain level of commitment to supplier diversity and what they're doing. When you think about your follow-up, and we'll get into that in a little bit, you want to know, am I going to see them at local events? Am I going to see them at regional events? Am I going to see them at other places? Or is this just a one-off where they were at this conference, and then either they live in a totally geographically different region and I'm not going to see them again, or they were just feeling it out and seeing if they were going to become members? How committed are they to this organization, so that you know where can you see them again and where you can continue to build that relationship. And then again, where and when can I meet them? So luckily you have the conference coming up, so you can see, do they have a booth there? Are they going to be presenting workshops? Where are they going to be? But then you also want to know, again, beyond that, Are there opportunities for me to meet with them? Do they have a supplier diversity summit that they have on campus that I can ask them about when I'm at the conference? Where are the different places that you can get to meet them? So those are things you want to think about as you prepare. So where are you going to keep all this information? Once you have all this information, yeah, this is this is this is really cheating. Where are you going to keep all this information once you have it? The key is to bring together your event playbook so you have all this information in one spot. I actually make this for some of my clients, and they've never thought of doing it before the conference, but after they do it, they realize how helpful it is. In fact, Heather, we had that one woman came up to you at the NGLCC conference.
Yeah, she came up to me and she said, "Are you the Heather that did the webinar?" And I said, "I am." And she said, "I can't tell you how much webinar changed my conference so far, because I never had the strategy ahead of time." And she pulled out her conference playbook and she said, "Look what I made because of what you told us." And she said, "It's made such a world of difference in my conference." So that was so good. I love hearing that.
Yeah. And I love that she also took our advice to print it out. So yes, we're going to give you a bunch of different pages, and you can certainly do it online and keep it in a shared folder so other people can access it. But what you really want to do, if you can print it out and take notes and have it in front of you while you're there, that's going to be the most helpful.
Right.
So what does it involve? It involves an exhibitor map. So at the NMSDC conference, there's going to be a lot of exhibitors, a lot of booths. If you're only targeting 5 people, you want to know where they are so you can approach them very efficiently. You want to do an agenda of the event and corporate profiles. So we'll get into what those look like. So this is the agenda for the event. You can see this is the agenda online, the NMSDC agenda, and there's all this stuff. What I recommend is you can certainly print this out and highlight things you want to go to, but I recommend making a personalized agenda that you put in your playbook, because you can see a lot of this stuff overlaps. You're probably not going to go to exhibitor setup every single day. So which day are you going to set up your booth? Are you going to set up your booth? Do you have a booth? You know, eliminate the things that you know you're not going to do, and then pick the things. If there's, for example, workshops and these different forums at 10:15 a.m. on Monday, which are you planning to attend? Put that on your agenda so you don't get confused later on. What that also helps you do is then know where you have free time that you can work in a coffee with someone here, an extended meeting with someone else, even if you don't have those matchmaking meetings. So for example, you'll see in my agenda, I have, I put day 2 from 8 to 8:45 having breakfast, right? If you consider Saturday the first day and Sunday, there's no breakfast at 9 a.m. There's registration you can do, or the Young Entrepreneurs Program, but there might be an opportunity in there between 8 and 9 to ask someone to breakfast. So you can put that on your conference agenda. And it also tells you where you'll have free spots for some spontaneous meetings, right? Where you can sort of spend time meeting with people, doing some networking, because while you want to have this really planned, you also want to leave time for, oh, I just got into a great conversation with this person, and I want to have some time to follow up. So you'll note in there, it starts with just the conference agenda and what you want to attend, but then you add things in as you go. So the corporate profiles. So we talked a little bit about how you know what the corporations are looking for, your research on them, but you also want to know, all of that's going to start to swim together in your head. And it's great to have it in your CRM. We'll talk about that in a bit, but you also want to have it at your fingertips when you run into people. And so by taking these corporate profiles and putting even a little picture in there, especially if you haven't met the person, so you can sort of say, okay, I'm looking out for this person. And then just a little bit about them. Why are they on your profile? You know, Starbucks is on my profile because I met him at the last event and he said he might be interested in my services. So I want to make sure I follow up with him. They're on the top of my list. And then these are just sample companies, but as you do your research, you want to fill this in. And this, having it written down, will also give you a sense of which are your priority companies. It'll give you a sense of what you can actually offer to them. And then the longer corporate profiles, that's something that you keep updated as you go. So for example, someone that's on your target list might be someone that you have, that's not on your target list, rather, is someone you might have a matchmaker with, or someone you end up having a good conversation with at a reception. You want to make sure that you capture that information so you know where you met them, what you talked about, what you think the opportunity is, what they think the opportunity is. And you want to have a place to keep that information so that you can keep that not only for this conference, but for the next conference going forward, the next event, and just your general business development as you go. And so these are the sample, a sample of how we do it, where there's the short profiles, the snapshots, you put their picture in there, and then here you do the same thing. You want to put their booth if they're exhibiting, so you have that number, that information, and then the notes about them, and then any action you want to take. The beauty of writing all this down is that you can then also pass this on to someone else. If someone else at your company is going to update the CRM or actually add them to it, then you want to make sure that they have that. Does someone have a question? I just want to make sure.
No, I think it's just the person that called in on the phone is not muted. So
okay,
we're getting some background noise.
Yeah, if everyone could mute, just that would be great. And then I will unmute everybody for questions at the end too. Or unmute yourself if you have a question. That would be great. All right. So at the event, while you're there, you want to follow the plan, but leave room for spontaneity. Now, when I say room for spontaneity, you definitely want to have room for those meetings, but that doesn't mean that's when you schedule all your conference calls from home. Like that's when you, of course, we're all business owners, we're going to do that, but you want to be as present as you can. You're spending money to go there and you're spending your time, which is your most precious asset. So you really want to be present while you're there. So to the extent that you can, you want to be present for the activities. Make connections. So what I mean there is that, yes, you're going to have these corporate profiles. That's why you got certified. That's one of the big benefits of being certified. But don't ignore the connections that you can make with your fellow MBEs, because they are people that are doing business with these corporations. They might have insight into them, and they can be a good resource for you too. So while you do want to be focused, you don't want to be so laser focused that you miss out on those other connections. You want to identify the different audiences and use different pitches. So what I mean by this is, obviously you're going to not go up to Chevy and pitch that you want to work with Ford, right? You're not going to do that, as someone actually did recently. That Reggie from GM told us that someone came up to them and was pitching Ford, and he's like, you know what? Let me just go over and introduce you to the people at Ford, which was very nice of him to do. But you don't want to be that person. What I mean is, you might have different things that you're asking them for. You might, and we'll actually get into this in a later slide, but are you asking this person for an introduction to someone, or is there something else that you would like them to do? Would you like them to attend a demo? Do you know that they have a supplier diversity or a vendor summit coming up that you want to attend? What is the different pitch that you're making to them? And then take notes in your playbook. So Heather, how have conferences been beneficial for you? Like, how have you made beneficial connections at conferences?
So for me, it's really about the relationship. I find that I actually talk very little actual business during the conferences, because I use that face-to-face time to build a relationship, so that when I do go back to them later, they know that I'm more than just someone who's trying to sell them something. So I will use it a lot of times to build those relationships and have those conversations. Now, if I've never met the person before, I obviously want them to know what I do, but it might just be like a casual mention of what we do. And if they want more information, then they'll ask. But that way, at least I can have a reason to follow up with them, that we had a very basic introduction.
No, you go ahead, continue on. Write whatever. I go down there.
Okay, I'm gonna mute someone else. Okay, just a reminder to put yourself on mute if you can, and feel free to unmute if you have a question.
But I also think it's really great when you are reaching out to people that you can say things, when we were talking about how to pick your target, right? So if you are currently doing business with pharmaceutical companies, let's just use them as an example, and you are doing business with Bristol Myers Squibb and Pfizer, and you know that you can also do business with Merck because that's part of your specialty, then you can use that experience to, first of all, choose which other pharmaceuticals you want to do business with, but also when you pitch them, right? So some industries are not into, well, I do business with your competitor. And some industries really like it. The pharmaceutical industry really likes if you've done business within the pharmaceutical industry. The hospitality industry really likes if you've done business with the hospitality industry. So you can use that to your advantage. So in addition to just helping that choose your target market at the conference, you can use it in your pitch. When we did business with this other pharmaceutical company, this is how we were able to help them. So that will most likely perk up the ears of that pharmaceutical person because they know that you understand their industry.
That's a really good point. And obviously, if you do business with the pharmaceutical industry and the hospitality industry, you're going to change up the pitch according to whatever audience that you're using. Yep. So, and then follow up. Heather said, she spends her time mostly building relationships and then doing the business aspect in the follow up. And I think that's a really good point of how important follow up is. You want to keep that in mind. I think there's a couple good reasons to think about the importance of follow-up. One is you want to schedule time for it so that you actually have time to follow up after the conference. You've made your travel arrangements, you have your hotel room. Just make sure that you have a couple hours set aside in the week or 2 weeks after you get back from the conference to do the follow-up you want to do. Otherwise, it doesn't get done. The other thing is you don't want to feel so pressured that this moment, this chance, this meeting is your only chance to talk to them. The corporate members can feel that from you. And you'll see when you approach them and they look a little hunted, that's why. Because a lot of people are coming up to them just, this is what I do. Where's the opportunity? Sales, 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 sales. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been just chatting with someone at a reception and then I say, oh, Heather, do you know this person? And then someone comes up and is like, oh, you're Heather? I need to talk to you about this, this, and this. And then that feeling where you're like, I just need to turn it off for a second.
Right.
So you can really,
especially after 10 p.m.
Yes. Yeah. And especially after the expo day, after you've been walking on the expo floor, which isn't to say that you shouldn't take the opportunities you have, but also be conscious of there is time for follow-up. How do you want to set yourself up so that follow-up is really effective? So they remember you and want to hear more about your company. If they've gotten 30 minutes or an earful at a reception when they're already too exhausted to listen, what they're going to remember is that they're exhausted. So just be patient and schedule that time for follow-up so you know it's coming. You also want to put a system in place. So I mentioned some of you might have CRMs, a customer relationship management tool. Some of you might do something a little more organically, but in any case, you want to put a system in place and follow that system for prioritizing connections and having a deadline for follow-up. There's one thing that's, I didn't put it in this deck, but we have a slide about the myth of supplier diversity, which is that I meet someone, they introduce me to the business unit that buys my goods and service, and then we do business, and that's the way it works, and we do it again. It's really, the supplier diversity people have a tremendously busy schedule. They're traveling all over the place to go to different conferences, as well as coordinating with people internally in their own offices and coordinating with thousands of other MBEs. So they might say, oh, follow up with me in 6 weeks, in 3 months, in 6 months. you want to make sure that you have a system, whether it's just putting a calendar reminder on your,
also in
on
your playbook.
calendar, put it in your playbook that this is what they said to follow up and this is what we're going to talk about, because 6 months from now you won't remember what you said you were going to talk about. And just make sure you follow that system for following up. The other thing is, we all have limited resources, and when you schedule that time for follow-up, you really want to prioritize, you know, the first hour or the first 2 hours should be spent with those companies where you really feel like there are opportunities where they're like, you know what, follow up with me, where they gave you specific instructions to follow up. Even if that instruction was register in the diversity portal, you want to make sure that you do that and then follow up and tell them that you did it, right? It's a good opportunity for you to show how you can follow directions. Do that, do those first. And the people that you're like, oh, you know, you're going on a family vacation to Disney World. I'm going to Disney World too. I'd love to pick your brain about that. It might be a priority. It might not be the biggest priority in this. So you want to just prioritize those connections and have a deadline. You also, after the conference, as you're following up, evaluate whether or not you met your goals. Was this conference useful for you? Were your target clients there? Are there other places where they said you should be? For example, if you sell to the automotive industry, they might say, you know what, there's an automotive supplier conference coming up, and that's where all of the people that you need to meet are going to be. Are there other conferences that you can go to continue these relationships? And then review your playbook and add notes to your list of corporate targets. Make sure you keep that up to date, because you'll be glad you did, because when the conference rolls around next year or you go to another conference, you will have that information ready to go, and you'll be able to say, this is where my conversation stands. Because the long and the short of it is, you're building long-term relationships. It's, if you got certified thinking that you're going to get a contract in the next 6 months, you're going to be disappointed. If you go to these conferences thinking that even if you have a matchmaker, even if you have a great conversation with the person who's going to buy your goods and services, the reality is it's going to take some time. And in that time, you want to be building a positive relationship, not setting yourself up for negative interactions.
Because even if you walk away from the conference knowing that the contract that you want is coming up in a year, that is invaluable information that you can now put in your notes, and you know that about 6 months before that, you have to reach out to that person because they're going to start looking for new suppliers. But it's invaluable information that, again, you probably won't remember off the top of your head. So that's why it's so important to schedule it in your calendar, in your playbook, and then write notes. Or even ask that person, when should I follow up about that upcoming contract RFP? Right.
Or even, how should I follow up? Some people will tell you right off, they're like, I don't even check my emails. I never look at them. Like, okay, well, how should I do that? Or I never answer phone calls. You should know what the best way to do it is. And if they're like, just, you know, I don't know, just get in touch with me, then get in touch how you can. Okay. So that's what we wanted to cover. There's certainly a lot more we can get into, but we want to hear from you, what you'd like to hear. I'm gonna, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or put a question in the chat window as we go. Does anybody have any questions? I think one thing that people usually have a question about while you guys are thinking of your questions is...
I think Nathan and Kim are still muted though, Liz.
Oh, okay, let me...
Also, we are going to email you, or we'll actually send it over to Nettie and she'll email it to you, the pages from the playbook, so you can print them out yourself. And how we suggest you put them together is those notes pages we gave you, and then to have some additional note pages so you can write them down when you're in your matchmaker or having a meeting. And then additionally,
when she stops talking, you say, "Can you hear me?"
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
And then, well, you put like one of those clear pages for business cards. So that way you have the business cards associated with those notes right next to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Did someone have a question?
You have a question.
Okay.
Why you didn't answer?
Right now we are asking about the conference. I have
Well,
a question.
yep.
This is William. So where can I find both the attendee list or registered folks and also the registered MBEs that so I can kind of like the exhibitor floor plan, so that way I can kind of map out what I want to do. Thank you.
That's a great question. The other MBEs, it is hard to get that information because the organizations themselves can't really share that information. As far as the map, let me go and look if they have that up yet. Because some of the, like, I know that the other organizations put that up so you can see exactly where they are. Sometimes some of the conferences have an app before the conference as well. And while Liz is answering the other part of it, I'll go ahead and look that up for you.
Yeah, and so your question was, how do you get the list and how do you get the map? Was that the question?
That was the
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think very few of the organizations give the list of attendees out, but if usually there's a conference app and you can actually connect with people in advance. So when you get emails to download the app, definitely download that app and you can make connections there and then start to get people's contact information. In terms of the corporate members, you can look at the list of sponsors that's on the website, on the NMSDC website, and that'll give you more information. Dana, do you have any additional notes on that, on how to get the lists?
Well, there is an exhibitor list on the NMSDC website. So it has a whole list, and Randall, I can email that, or William, I can email that to you if you want. It has a whole list of all of the attending corporations and their booth number. But it doesn't necessarily give you, and there is actually on the top right corner of that page, you can look at the map as well.
Great. Yeah, we can send that out with the recording too. The link to that.
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a place where I can find what a company's supplier diversity initiatives or goals are? Like in an annual report, sustainability report, where might be a good place to find information like that?
Exactly those places you mentioned, their annual report or social media, any of those. Not all of them list it publicly because if you don't reach your goals, then you don't always want to show your face, right? But I know companies like Intel, for example, and Coca-Cola, for example, are very public about their 2020 and 2025 goals. So if you have, for example, like if you're looking to do business with American Water, you can go on their website and look at their supplier diversity page. Sometimes you have to actually Google American Water supplier diversity in order to get to their supplier diversity page. Sometimes it's a little bit convoluted to get to it from the main page, especially if it's like a bank or an insurance company, because you're going to find mostly how they want you to sign up on those main pages. So if you Google supplier diversity and then that company, you'll get a better idea of it. But a lot of times on their corporate annual reports, it will show you their supplier diversity initiatives if there are any.
So supplier diversity is probably the best phrase or kind of buzzword
Correct.
to use when searching?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And you might find it, if it's not in the overall annual report, sometimes they have a corporate social responsibility report or CSR report, and it sometimes makes its way in there. Like I know with ExxonMobil, it finds its way in there. So you can look for it there.
Great. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Hello, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, I am in a food business. I'm using co-packer manufacturing sources. I've been member since 2004 or 5, went through 3 different presidents in local organization. My category seems to never have anybody connect or same kind of business. I've been even filling out survey why no food business can help me out. Nobody seems to help, and I even went to matchmaking the meeting, and they sent me up. I made a sample. I took all my product. I show up. Then they said, here, nobody can talk to you. So I'm really frustrated. How come only certain category can get help And my area, I've been member that long, I cannot get any connection or any kind of information help me out.
So your question is, how can you get more traction for your specific commodity?
Yes, seems like nobody available.
So that's a great question. And oftentimes you're right. The person that buys the individual commodities may or may not be at the conference. Many times the corporations, the companies just send their supplier diversity manager plus maybe one other person. If a company has multiple team members on their supplier diversity team, they'll often send a few of them. But again, not always. It just depends on the budget that year, the availability of the people to go. So what your job is prior to the conference is to find out who you would want to talk to internally. Who is the buyer of your commodity? Who is the decision maker of what you are selling? So when you establish that relationship with the supplier diversity manager, you can say, you know what, would really love to meet so-and-so. Can you facilitate an introduction for me? Because you're right, they may or may not be the one to make your decision, and remember, they can get you in to meet that person because they have that warm introduction. But if you have not established a relationship, they can also keep you out. So it's incredibly
So how can I get a help from local? Seems like no local organization never can, make me a connection or any kind of information private to me. I did all my own, like a Walmart open call. I got an email from them through the Walmart friends. I did it, but nothing is providing. I've been member since like 2004 and 5. Very frustrating. Smaller company, I have an excellent product. No one can seems lead to buyer or big corporation, for example, like a Fry's, Kroger. They don't work with this organization, seems to me.
You also need to make sure that when you're talking to them, and Liz, I'll let you jump in because I feel like you probably have something to say, is that
I don't have anybody to talk to. That is my problem.
But how can that be? If you're going to the conferences, a representative from Kroger is there. If you're going to the conferences, a representative from Home Depot is there. And if your value proposition, if your elevator pitch clearly articulates what you do and why you're better than everybody else, then they will want to introduce you.
Nobody, that one time I went to conference because I'm a small company. I have to work with the second layer, third layer, whatever it is. I don't even know how to start it. Local, my organization, I've been complaining, even national survey, I said this food category, nobody seems, in your organization.
Well, I would say there's two things. So the local organization is the one putting on the webinar. So this is one of the things that they're doing to help you prepare. But it is, when we talked about the way supplier diversity works, it's not that, okay, this is what you do, and then you get an introduction to someone else. You get an introduction to the supplier diversity person, and then they introduce you to the buyer, and then it works really smoothly. You have to continue to build up those relationships. So
I cannot even start to build a relationship. How can I build a relationship? Nobody provided to me or available to my area, my category. So that is very nationally, they have to look into it. I ask here, President, can you, provide me any who is doing a diversity program company? For example, Walmart, I found out myself, I applied, I made the open call 2018, but other company, they don't put out in a public looking for that. I should get information from organization. So I'm not getting any information, so I cannot start any relationship.
Well, I would say, I think we can take this offline and answer any questions that you have. But I will say, like, Walmart and Kroger do participate at the conference. So the way you start the relationship is you have to meet them. You have to go and talk to them and meet them and then start to build the relationship. So I would say that's the way. But I think probably we can answer any other questions you have offline. But I want to see if anyone else has any questions as well. Does anyone else have questions? I mean, Heather, have you seen, like, I think we've worked with companies that are in food and beverage that have been successful with the certification. So
Absolutely. It
it's
really is just a
definitely out
matter
there.
of showing up, making sure you're talking to the people and you're clearly and succinctly articulating your value proposition and why you're better than any of your competitors, and then asking them how to follow up.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So if you have any other questions for Liz or I, these are our email addresses. We know as soon as your webinar's over, you always think of something that you have to ask. So we can be reached at those emails. And that, you know, diversity masterminds as a whole, this is just a small, tiny little glimpse of part of one of our modules of what diversity masterminds covers and helps companies maximize, so that when you go to the conference, you know, we would cover not just you should have a value proposition, but what does that look like? How to create it? How do you say why you're better than the other person? And those are the type of things we cover in the pre-conference. The website is diversitymasterminds.com, and I'm sure Liz has something special for you.
Yes. And we will be sending, so the people that attended this will be sending you a promo code to get 50% off of upcoming cohorts. So you can look for that in the email we send afterward with our recording. Great. Any other questions? I think if not, I think we can wrap up. Feel free to get in touch with us if you have anything going further. But for now, we wish you a fantastic conference, and yeah, and happy hunting of the corporate members.
All right, guys, good luck. Want to hear about all your successes at the conference.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.